we're all going to go hungry.
It started raining in Port Augusta a few days ago, and now we're running out of food in Perth. I don't know if Mark McGowan's a religious man, but you'd have to think God is sending you some kind of a sign. Pacific National is a rail freight company that usually runs 50 trips a week from Adelaide to Perth. Then this happened. And so now they're unloading the food that was on the train and sending it over here on the air highway on the back of trucks. An extra 280 truck drivers coming to the state from high-risk jurisdictions every week. Wonder what that'll do for case numbers. Supermarket shelves are emptying fast as West Australians panic buy, and we're starting to eye each other off.
Oh, that's a horrible thought.
Never mind meth. Bikie drug mules will be filling their asses with oat milk.
Well, they can't rely on international students to help them out.
McGowan has fumbled this one badly. We've completely ignored tertiary education during the pandemic. It's the fourth biggest industry in the state. Not that anyone knows that. It's worth billions of dollars. That's not billions in economic activity, it's billions in hard currency, and it's evaporated because we think foreigners are diseased.
But let's face it, you're riddled.
These students are forking out 30 or 40 grand a year to study here. So give your Uber driver 5 stars next time because they're keeping the economy ticking. The students haven't been coming in for the past couple of years, which has completely screwed the universities. Then they were told that from February 5,
a date which will live in infamy,
they could come in and Perth Airport could be like that closing scene in Love Actually. Then on January 20, McGowan said Feb 5 was off and the students were barred. Again. 5 days later, he said, no, I've changed my mind, you can come in as long as you're double vaxxed and quarantined for 14 days. 4 days after that, he said, no, he's changed his mind again, and you could only come in if you were a returning student, not a new enrolment. You arrived before 12:01 a.m. on February 5. You were fully vaxxed. You can prove you have somewhere to isolate that's within 200 kilometres of your entry point, and you have a PCR test on the 1st and 12th day of your quarantine. Clear?
Clear as mud, and it's not just the students that can't get in.
McGowan's also ensured something even more dangerous than COVID stays out of WA. It's not just business that's now saying the hard border is costing them. The federal Liberal Party is spewing because they can't send senior members of Cabinet over to raise money for the upcoming election. I said this would happen, and you didn't believe me.
No, I thought it was a bit far-fetched.
No. Some people, not this person, but some people reckon he's keeping the border up so he can disrupt the federal election campaign. If ScoMo and his Cabinet mates find it hard to get into WA, the Liberal Party won't be able to fundraise. No fundraising means no advertising. Sitting governments, that's federal and state, whore out their front benches to business in the months before an election. They charge people to attend fundraising dinners. It's a total affront to democracy, straight up cash for access. They all complain about it being corrupt when they're in opposition, and then they all do it when they're in government. The need to quarantine when coming west means big guns like ScoMo, Frydenberg and Dutton are staying put over east. So the local yokels have had to pick up the slack. Right now, Tuesday night, a bunch of people are having dinner with Curtin MP Celia Hammond and Attorney General Michaelia Cash. They paid $3,000 a head to be there.
Given the shelves are bare, the chef must have been sweating bullets.
You'd be hoping for something decent on the menu.
And bring us the finest food you got, stuffed with the second finest.
Excellent, sir. Lobster stuffed with tacos.
Now, the hard border applies to federal Labor as well, but that's no skin off Mark McGowan's nose, because he doesn't need Albanese. Albanese needs him, desperately. Plus, WA Labor is still swimming in cash from last year's state election campaign. The party received $5 million more in donations last year than the Libs did. A WA Liberal Party spokesperson said, party members are enthusiastically fundraising to support our great WA Liberal team.
I got it. I know how we can raise the money. How? Car wash.
So we can communicate the Morrison government's plan to secure Australia's economic recovery.
Someone who knew about economic recovery was Father Joe.
This is the Catholic priest who shot into headlines a few years ago when he was accused of stealing 500 grand from St Joseph's in Subiaco. He passed away at 11 o'clock today, Tuesday, after a 3-year battle with cancer. His parishioners called him Father Armani or Father Versace because he was quite the dapper dresser.
He wasn't just buying clothes.
Joe left St Joseph's in 2017 and the new priest noticed some irregularities which he reported to Archbishop Tim Costello, who went to the cops. The Financial Crime Squad thought they had Joe banged to rights, and on the surface, it looked pretty bad for him. They went through his credit card receipts and found he'd spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on restaurant meals and travel, quite a lavish lifestyle. Boat cruises around Montenegro, trips to Mauritius, a holiday in Ireland at the rather stately Mount Falcon estate.
Looks expensive.
He spent 185 grand on travel between 2014 and 2017. And on top of that, some of the entertaining was done with some pretty heavy characters. In 2018, he was charged. 2 years later, the DPP dropped the case.
Why?
Prosecutors worked out that under the Catholic Church's systems of governance, it's called canon law, a parish priest can spend money donated to his church any way he wants. He is judge, jury and executioner of what gets spent and where. Tim Costello was furious with the DPP and sued Joe for the $500,000 he reckons was misspent. That civil suit was settled out of court last year. Joe paid back some of the money in question and they issued a joint statement saying that they were moving on. And now that he's dead, you're going to ask me whether or not I think he was a crook.
Well, that's what everyone wants to know.
Here's the truth about Father Joe Walsh. He spent way too much money, but he didn't steal it. Every transaction was documented. This guy raised millions for the Catholic Church. When he took over St Joseph's, it was a crumbling wreck. By the time he left, it had been restored completely and it was all paid up. He was an extraordinary businessman. He developed land next to St Joseph's where the Ear Science Institute sits right now. That deal gives the church $300,000 a year for the next 40 years, at which point the land and the building come back to church ownership. It was the deal of a lifetime. And when Joe was chasing the money and convincing people to open their wallets, he did it over a good bottle of wine and a decent steak. As he got older, if he had to fly to Sydney to seal a $100,000 donation, he decided he had earned the right to fly business class.
Fair enough.
And after pushing more money into the church than any other priest in a generation, he went on holiday. Look, he took the piss a bit. He spent too much, but it was a fraction of what he brought in.
He did have expensive tastes for a priest.
Expensive tastes are neither illegal nor a sin. Joe didn't take a vow of poverty. Celibacy, yes, but not poverty. He came from a generation of Irish men who saw the priesthood as a profession, not a calling. It was completely normal in big Irish families to have a son who was a plumber, an accountant, one who was a doctor, and a priest. It was no different to any other line of work. And like accountants and doctors and plumbers, he was human. But on balance, Western Australia is a much better place because of his work. That's the truth about Joe Walsh. Here's the truth about his bosses in the Catholic Church. The men in that ivory tower never said a thing when their Western suburbs rock star was filling the collection plates. They had no problem with administering the faith to prisoners and hookers and bikies when the pews were so rammed with people they were standing outside the church doors listening in. But they gave him no quarter when all that changed. They showed none of the Christian values of love and compassion and forgiveness that they preached each day from the pulpit. And they did that to a man who was dying of cancer. Not that they even believed him about that. During their legal negotiations, they wanted to see proof that he was dying.
Wow, well, they've got that now. Do you think a lot of people will want to come to his funeral?
Yeah, that'll be difficult though. But there'll be no border guards at the pearly gates for Father Armani.
God help us for good taste.
I'm Ben Harvey. For more Up Late, click the subscribe button below.